On this week's episode of Whitetail Cribs, we're visiting with Kevin Robertson from Niles, Ohio. Kevin is a civil engineer by trade and has been hunting Ohio whitetails throughout his lifetime. Get ready to check out an impressive wall of trophy bucks among some other neat taxidermy. If you'd like to continue seeing these Whitetail Crib episodes, smash the like button and leave us a comment.
The Exodus team is traveling around the United States to take a look inside the trophy rooms of some of the most interesting whitetail hunters in the country. From giant bucks, unique racks, and riveting stories, welcome to Whitetail Cribs.
What's going on, guys? Come on in. All right, welcome to my crib. My name's Kevin Robertson. I'm a civil engineer here for the city of Niles. Do a bunch of drafting, grant management, capital projects, things of that nature. I'm gonna show you around the house. This here is my living room. My daughter's, she's a 5-year-old. She's kind of taken over my house. She took over this. She's got her Barbies, her horse barn. She got the whole nine going. Come over to my family room. Again, she pretty much took over this room too. She took it over, she's 5. Here's a picture of her right here. Her name is Kensley. We're actually getting her started into the deer woods, turkey woods this year. I was fortunate enough to take her on a turkey hunt this year. She got to hear them, see them. We actually almost was able to get a shot on one. With a little bit of success, maybe later in the year, we're gonna try again. With that being said, let's head to the kitchen. Now, I'm not one to slave over a stove. I am a bachelor, I'm a single guy. So I do most of my work on the grill. I may swing over to my mom's, let her cook me a home-cooked meal, and buzz out of there. But this is my fridge, pretty basic. We got the beer, the water, the Gatorade for them early morning hangovers. I'm a red meat guy. I obviously hunt. Got a bunch of deer, back straps, beef, turkey, ground sausage, all that good stuff that we like to grill out and do. So with that being said, I'm sure you guys probably want to see what's downstairs and not what's in the rest of my house. So let's head downstairs. All right, this is my man cave. Got a variety of different things going on down here. I want to start with my first deer that I ever shot back in 1999. We purchased the property in West Virginia where me and my grandfather, we spent a lot of our time. 1999, like I said, my dad actually sat with me on my very first kill. It meant a lot to me. He's not much of the outdoors guy, but he wanted to create that memory with me, so he sat with me. Fortunate enough to kill this buck and start my journey in the deer woods and just in the woods in general with him by my side. But I know I did mention my grandpa. He kind of molded me into the whole outdoors. The first buck that I'm going to talk about here is just a smaller 8. When I shot this deer, I thought he was the king of the woods. I'll never forget my grandpa was laying on the couch and I come back and I was like, hey, you know, Papa, I just shot a big buck. I thought this thing was a giant back then. And oh, no, you didn't, no, you didn't. I showed him and he was tickled pink. And my grandfather passed away, unfortunately, in 2018, but he was hands down my best friend. We had a bond like no other. And I mean, he really set it out for me as far as being able to hunt, knowing what to do, knowing what to look for, scouting, and all the whole nine. These 2 bucks here were killed in consecutive years. I was actually hunting with a gentleman, the name of Rich Hill. He showed me pretty much all about big deer. He's got a wall similar to mine. I can't thank him enough for what he's done for me as far as getting me involved into that next tier as far as big buck activity, what to look for, all the scouting techniques and whatnot. I shot these 2 deer both locally, both 110, 115 inch deer, both with the bow. I think it was 2007, 2008. And like I said, that kind of laid it out for me in terms of, hey, you know, I mean, I want to start killing bigger deer. You see Lee and Tiffany and the Drurys and all them guys out there. You're like, man, I mean, these are big, but what they're shooting is on a whole nother level. So I got to get a little piece of that, you know. So, and then we're going to go over here and kind of talk about each one of these that I have on my wall. These were all shot within the last roughly 10 years. This one right here was the only one on the wall that is actually a shotgun buck. The rest are all shot with the bow. He scores right around the Pope and Young mark. Shot him opening day of shotgun season. I believe it was 2008. Came across the wide open cornfield. And again, at this point, this was my first Pope and Young animal. I called my buddy and I thought I shot the biggest thing ever. Needless to say, my biggest buck, had to put him on the wall. Moving on, this deer, one of my second biggest buck, we called him Talon because he's kind of got that eagle claw talon up here. He scored 154. I shot him with the bow, about 10 yards. Probably the craziest hunt that I've ever been on. I actually seen this deer skirting a ridge top on the other side of a creek. I was hunting a deer we called the Big 8 that morning. I'd been putting a lot of pressure on the area. I told my buddy, I said, let's get a stand set someplace else. We scouted an area and this deer had this thing tore up. So we hung a set actually at about 1 o'clock. I got in there at about 2 o'clock. And like I said, I seen him pushing a few does. I gave him 2 or 3 long estrus bleats. 5 minutes later, he comes chomping across the creek. I was sitting between a fence row and a creek. It was a natural funnel pinch point, and he came into about 15, 20 steps, and I smoked him. And the best thing about the hunt was this deer literally ran probably 30 yards full go into a barbed wire fence. The 2 posts in between the barbed wire in which he ran into shot straight up out of the ground. The barbed wire unraveled off of the 1 post, and it just created like a spark all the way down. It looked like fireworks going off. He gets up like nothing happened, takes 2 big hops 10 yards in front of me, and does the death wobble and tips over. It was the most unbelievable thing. If you could have had it on film, it probably would have had 1 million views. But then in sequential order, we're gonna go over here. There was a couple years in between where I shot them other ones, and I, just like everybody, I ate my tag a year or 2. But then we come to him. I shot him in 2014. He scores 131, straight 10. Shot him with the bow at about 20, 25 yards. I was fortunate enough to see him fall. I grunted him in. I shot him mid-afternoon, probably about 2 o'clock. He was a good buck, big bodied deer on this one. And then that went into my biggest one. A lot of history with him. I actually have 2 sheds from the year before, matching set that we found about 1/4 of a mile. I mean, as you can see, he put on a ton of inches. He maintained all these inside points and just put on a ton of mass and a ton of tine length. But we called this deer, my daughter actually called it. She was like 2 years old at the time. She called this deer Puka. Why, I don't know. But the neighbors had names for him. This deer was getting seen all over. My buddy Lionel, good friend of mine, which is the property that I get to hunt, he called me one night. I was actually betting horses at the track, and it was a weeknight. He says, Kev, he goes, I just seen a giant. I go, really, how big? He says, probably at least in the 60s. I was like, well, we got to get some cameras up. So we did our intel. We started getting pictures, seeing that this deer was actually living right by an old gravel road. And he was crossing it all the time. So I says, well, I'm gonna hunt right by this road. Ended up seeing him one time by the road, the night in which my buddy Lionel actually shot a buck. And then nobody seen him for about a week. Got to be about the 2nd week of November, and I says, I'm gonna go up on the oak flat. First morning in there, I see him fall on about 8 does. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna stick to this ridge top for a few days. That night I went in there, no luck, didn't see him. Ended up passing about 125-inch deer. I get back in there the next morning. It's a heavy, heavy frost. Didn't see a deer. It was like 10 o'clock. I remember my one buddy texted me. He says, hang tight. You know, as soon as this frost starts to burn off, them deer are going to start moving. And you better believe it. As soon as that sun came up, that frost started melting, deer started moving. It was about 10:30, and I heard a stick break, and here he comes down the ridge. Couldn't believe it. He's coming right down the ridge. I mean, and I'm smack dab right in the center of this ridge, right on his scrape line. He hits a scrape at 40 yards, and I'm in a climber. I'm like, man, I'm probably sticking out like a sore thumb right now. He comes down in, and he was so big and looked so majestic. I was like, you know what? I'm not even stopping this deer. He's going to be at 10 yards. I put it right on his shoulder, and I says, with a little bit of movement of him walking, it should be a perfect shot. Shoot him. He takes 2 or 3 hops, runs, stumbles, falls 50, 60 yards from me, was on cloud 9, called Lionel. He left work. All my buddies came. I mean, with the sheds, all the pictures, the velvet pictures we had of him, the year before we had pictures of him. I mean, my biggest deer, he scores 172 and change. Great hunt, great day. I think that was like November 10th. Right around that 10th, 11th, I've shot a lot of these deer. It's like the lucky time for me. Another crazy one, this next deer here, a lot of history with him. We called him Medusa. It seemed like that year, this was 14, 15, this was 16. Fast forwarding through the season a little bit, it gets to be October 31st. This deer comes around. I had a handful of pictures of him, October 31st, November 1st. Go figure, I was at work. Come to find out, about a week later, I'm in the stand November 10th. I look out, coming up out of a bottom, didn't even have to put the binos up. The big 17 comes out of the bottom, following 2 does. I mean, this deer, white horns, super big. I got a bunch of pictures of him I can show you. I got the sheds of him I can show you him. This deer comes out. I put the binos on him. I was like, it's the big 17. He comes all the way across the wide open field. As soon as he gets perpendicular with me, the does, like it was meant to be, run straight to the food plot. So I'm thinking, this is going to happen. I mean, I'm going to shoot back-to-back booners. This deer comes into the food plot. The does work to my left, in which I didn't have a shot, and he stands right in the middle of the food plot, probably about 30 yards. I'm thinking to myself, don't take the shot. He's slightly quartering to, just wait. As it started to wear on me, I'm thinking if he cuts over, I'm not going to be able to shoot this deer. So I'd come to full draw, held tight on the crease. As soon as the arrow about hits this deer, he turns into where the arrow's coming, and it goes right down through here. Got probably 6 inches of penetration, watched him run right back to his bedroom, and we tracked him for probably 700 yards with good blood. Never found him. Never got a picture of him again. Come shed season, craziest story, this deer died and shed out on his carcass. The pedicles matched perfectly. It was the most unbelievable thing. He would have scored roughly mid-70s with a roughly about a 20-inch spread. That's what we put him at, about 74, 75. Spent all the next day looking for him, though, on the 11th. The 12th comes around. I go to the same stand, the same exact stand, about a half hour before dark. He comes off the hill. I had about 16 does in the cut corn. And he, instead of going to 16 does, he beelined right to me, put his front 2 legs down in the watering hole, and I shot him at probably 10 steps. Heart shot, he ran off. Seen him fall probably 60, 70 yards away. Again, we had the whole crew down there. We had a few beers. I mean, we got to cut him up down there and just reminisce and talk about the hunt. And I mean, it was a great time. Probably one of my most memorable deer, with all the history and the hit and the not find, and then finding the sheds, and it was a roller coaster of events that year. So that's him. He scored actually about I think it was 141 and change. Bunch of junk. I mean, as you can see, he's got basically a double drop. He's got this curly Q drop. He's got a big chunk over here. I don't know if you can see it. Double main beam. As far as character, I don't know that you can get much more character on a deer. Then the next year, which would have been 2017, was this guy. Was the first deer that I can honestly say probably had a little bit of ground shrinkage. I was struggling to find a shooter that year, actually, and there was an 8-point that was very similar to him that I wanted to pass. And then I was hunting a bottom, actually the bottom that the big 17 that I just talked about came out of, and because I knew they always worked that bottom. There was a big scrape line that was always through there, and I was hunting it, and I hit the horns one morning. He came running in, and all I seen was big 2s and what seemed to be a little bit wider of a deer. It happened like that. Put the arrow through him, actually put a pretty bad shot on him. I liver shot him. Not a lot of story with him. We didn't have any pictures of him. He was just been passing through or something like that. I mean, we had, like I said, we had a bunch of pictures of a deer that was super, super similar to this deer, and we wanted to pass him. I don't know if he made it or not. We never really got pictures of him again. But he's the only one on the wall that doesn't make Pope and Young. He's low 20s. I think he was 121 and change. And then this year, my most recent deer, it's what we call a drop tine buck. My buddy Lionel, again, he's a good friend of mine. We're always hunting together. He has a dynamite property that we hunt. He had shot his deer. He's like, hey Kev, you know, he says there's a buck in there that we can shoot. He said, called drop tine buck. He said he's a 30s caliber deer. So he said go in there and shoot him. Could have shot him the first night. Didn't have all the blind windows open. He came through one of my lanes, And by the time I got one of the other blind windows open, he was at about 50, quartering away, heading towards some does. So I didn't get an opportunity at him. Hunted probably, I don't know, probably 2 more weeks. I think it was about 10 or 12 sits. I was hunting hard because I wanted to shoot him. And I passed up some decent bucks, some up-and-comers. Nothing, didn't have any sightings of anything else that I was interested in. So I said, it's going to be him or tag sandwich. And I called Lionel. I was like, hey, come with me. Let's sit in the blind with me. Let's change up my luck. I says, I need something to change my luck up. He comes in and sits, and I swear that kid has a horseshoe in his back pocket at all times. Half hour before dark, I look down, and there's a couple does come up out, and Lionel looks, and he says, big buck coming. And I put the binos on him, and I was like, dude, it's drop time. He came out, probably 30-yard shot. Lionel creaked the door open, and I don't know if it was wet or what, but it goes, you know, I was like, oh no. I says, Lionel, what'd you do to me? He starts laughing. And the one doe actually blows at me. She blows. I was like, oh, it's all over. And that buck was just keyed in on them does. He didn't care about anything else going on. We got it open, and it was actually my only crossbow kill ever, because we can't come to full draw on the blind. So he's like, just take my crossbow. So we took the crossbow. I put the 30-yard mark on him and peeled him right above the heart. Me and a couple of my buddies, we let him go overnight. We went back, got him the next morning, and the end result is him being on the wall. Good deer, scored with the drop time. He scored 137 and change. Couldn't be more happy. I mean, as far as that property goes, I mean, it's something else. But that's the deer. I do some other hunting, turkey hunting. Huge into the turkey woods, as you can see. Got a handful of beards there, a fan with some beards underneath of it. Made this pretty cool spur necklace. I got a bunch of spurs. I'm going to make another one, but I try to keep all the spurs, all the beards from my birds that I shoot. Shot this one here actually with the bow. He's my only bow gobbler, so I figured I'd full body mount him. The bobcat over here, shot him in West Virginia. Another one of those stories with my grandpa. I have to touch on it. I was actually up in a stand deer hunting and seen this bobcat coming through. I actually thought it was a house cat. He perched up on a log, and we had never seen one down there. So I was like, you know what? I don't even know what that is. He ends up coming in, perched, like I said, he perched up on a log at about 100 yards away. I'm watching him come all the way in. I was like, man, he's got a nubby tail. I said, that's a bobcat. So I knew they were in season, but no one had ever seen them. So I was like, oh, if this thing gives me the opportunity, I'm going to shoot. Wouldn't you know, he comes in, perches up on another log, probably 30 yards away. I got a lever action 30-30. Blow the shot, completely miss him, 30 yards. I'm livid with myself. He takes off running, chamber another one, full go, rolled him. I mean, probably could never make the shot again in my life. But I go back to the cabin, you know, I tell my grandpa, he says, I remember my uncle was there. He's like, Kevin's coming back. He's got something on the back of the four-wheeler. He goes, looks like a bobcat. My grandpa, if you knew my grandpa, no, he didn't. No, he didn't. And I got up there, and he's like, Dad, because it's my uncle, it's his dad. He said, Dad, you better get out of here. Kevin just shot a bobcat. He came out, and my grandfather was on cloud 9. It was the best thing he ever seen. No one's ever killed one. No one's ever seen one. I shot one, and I mean, I had to full body mount it. It was one of them great memories down there at that piece of property. So that's the story on him. And then we got a few bears back here. This one's actually my buddy's. I'm just housing it for him. He didn't have any room for it. These were both shot in Quebec. This was mine. I shot him in 2012 in Quebec, again with Lionel. Can't say enough about his family, his dad, and him as a friend. I mean, he gave me the opportunity to go after this bear and all these deer without giving him a little credit. I mean, it'd be wrong of me. So. But he was gracious enough to invite me on this hunt. 2012, I shot him at like 19 yards, the muzzle loader. I wanted to use my bow, couldn't. But to anybody out there that doesn't think they want to bear hunt because it's over baits or whatever, I thought the same thing. Until you actually get in what they call the bush up there in Canada, and you see one of these animals just creeping through that make zero noise. As big as they are, make zero noise. Walking through the woods, and then you get to physically see one. It's a very surreal moment. I shot him at 19 yards. I got to hear him, the death moan, the whole 9 yards. And brought them back. Lionel had shot one the same night. And I mean, it was just a great overall experience. If you get a chance, go on one. It's a pretty affordable hunt. Quebec, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, wherever you go, I would be interested in going again. So that being said, I mean, for the most part, that is my man cave. I appreciate you guys coming, but for now, you guys got to get out of here.
Thanks for watching this episode of Whitetail Cribs. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you're wondering who the heck we are and how the heck we travel across the country to record these episodes, we are Exodus Trail Cameras and simply believe quality trail cameras should not cost a fortune. That's why 5 years ago, we started a direct-to-consumer company to tackle some of the biggest frustrations we've seen as typical trail camera users: product longevity, product performance, and customer service. We simply build cameras that flat out work in the harshest conditions and back them up with best-in-class customer service. We're proud to say we have the industry's leading 5-year warranty that even includes theft and accidental damage coverage. If you'd like to learn more about Exodus and the products we have to offer, click the link in the description and head over to our website. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in a comment below or shoot us an email.